So every day you wake up and you take a look at the news and you are just wincing and you're going, for the love of God, please, somebody pump the brakes on this. This is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And so yet again, on the issue of due process and the Constitution and immigration, there is a war on humanity happening. So look at this from Dropside News. New, hundreds of international students in the U.S. have been told to self-deport and have their F-1 visas revoked for sharing anti-national content on social media or for alleged involvement in campus activism. So let's repeat that. The reason they're being kicked out of the country is sharing anti-national content on social media, which means what? You criticize the United States of America? You criticized our ally Israel? That's called common sense. That's called basic human decency and morality. So they're being kicked out for that and alleged involvement in campus activism, as if campus activism is like grand larceny or something. That's how they talk about it. No, campus activism is your First Amendment right. But this is where we are now. All right, let's continue. The news of mass student visa cancellations for liking or sharing certain content on social media was published by the Times of India on March 29th, though the details are still being confirmed. This crackdown, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is part of the AI-powered program Catch and Revoke, which reviews students' social media activity to identify violations. All right, this is absurd and insane on so many levels. First of all, this shouldn't be done at all. Second of all, not only are they doing it, they're using an AI program to determine who to deport? I'm sure it'll work swimmingly, just like the Israelis' Lavender AI program worked swimmingly. How they gave them the targets to bomb, and oh, would you look at that, they killed massive numbers of innocent men, women, and children repeatedly. What is with this deference to AI like it's some sort of god overlord? The AI says it, so it must be true. Like, what the fuck are you doing? This is some sort of dystopian sci-fi novel that we're living in now. This is like a fucking nightmare. Now AI is saying, deport Susie for retweeting something about Palestine? Jesus fucking Christ. Reporter Ken Klippenstein recently uncovered a Rubio directive that orders the State Department to monitor social media activity of current student visa holders and new applicants for signs of a hostile attitude toward U.S. citizens or U.S. culture, including government institutions or founding principles. Holy shit. Guys, this isn't a tough one. This isn't ambiguous. There is no gray area here. This is 100% First Amendment protected speech. 100%. Once you're in this country, once you get through the visa process, once you're a legal immigrant or legal resident, you have First Amendment rights. So they can't say, hey, I don't like your opinions, so I'm going to kick you out. Now, look, it's a different legal question when they're deciding whether or not to let you in. Then they have more leeway and more latitude to do what they want. But the fact that they're already here, they've already been approved, they are legal immigrants or legal residents, and they're just being kicked out for having opinions that the deep state says are thought crimes, that is fucking nightmarish. And by the way, where the hell are all the so-called free speech warriors? Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, the trigonometry idiots, all these people who made a career off of bashing political correctness and cancel culture and the left-wing snowflakes and the censorious authoritarian left. Here we have actual First Amendment violations, and it's fucking crickets, dog. I could hear a pin drop from those motherfuckers because they never cared about the First Amendment. They're political hacks, and they were using it as a partisan issue to clobber the left, which is what they wanted to do anyway. Now that it's the right violating free speech, oh my God. And in a more egregious way than the left ever has in modern American history. Oh my God. They're again, could hear a pin drop. Absolutely dick is what's coming from these people. All right. Rubio confirmed on Thursday that at least 300 student visas had been canceled so far, according to the Times of India. Affected students have received emails instructing them to leave the U.S. immediately through the CBP Home app. Jesus Christ. So there was that Turkish student who got her visa revoked, and she was literally like masked, jackbooted regime thugs came up and kidnapped her off the street. And somebody actually recorded a video of it. This is what this country's become. This is what this country... If you had a video like this from the Soviet Union, it would be taught in U.S. classrooms as the height of authoritarianism. And everybody would be universally against it. But now, this is what the Trump regime is doing. This is what they're doing. Immigration attorneys who spoke to the Times of India, also believe the wave of self-deportation emails is linked to the same March 25th internal directive from Rubio. If the social media review uncovers potentially derogatory information indicating that the applicant may not be eligible for a visa, fraud prevention units are required to take screenshots of social media findings to the extent it is relevant to a visa ineligibility to. Anyway, it goes on. But you get the point. Thought crimes. We don't like your posts on social media. You're too critical of the U.S. You're too critical of Israel. You're too critical of Trump. We're going to get rid of you. This is fucking crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Now, by the way, we're not done. The Trump administration appears to be going into a visa database to quietly change students' immigration status. It's coming entirely by surprise, setting students up to be detained without warning. It's Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeisa Ozturk on a wider scale. So they're doing this. No notification to the individuals, no notification to the schools that they go to. They're just changing the immigration status and then kidnapping them off the streets. Remember, guys, Donald Trump, the reports were, he decided, hey, I'm not happy with the numbers that you guys are giving me of deportations. ICE, you got to get those numbers up. And so they gave them a quota. They said you need minimum 1,200 deportations every day. Well, guess what? As you all know, there just are not that many undocumented immigrant violent criminals. There aren't that many. And by the way, every administration tries to deport them. It's not like a novel thing that the Trump administration, every Democrat, Republican, every administration tries to deport those people. Okay. So, since there's not that many of those, and you want 1,200 deportations a day, who the fuck are you going to deport? So then it starts going from undocumented immigrant violent criminals, okay, to undocumented immigrant nonviolent criminals, to just undocumented immigrants who have zero criminal record, to legal permanent residents, as we're seeing, to Palestine critics, to Trump critics. Like, this is what we're doing. It's just fucking, I don't know, whoever we want. And remember, there is no due process. They're not going through a process, so these aren't even really deportations. These are kidnappings. That's what they are. And so everybody needs to be aware of that. Deportation implies some sort of legal process where you get to that point. If you just steal somebody off the street, no hearing, no due process, no ability to talk to a lawyer or journalist or anything, and then you send them to an El Salvador slave labor gulag, what are we talking about here? The destruction of the law domestically in the United States of America. That's what we're talking about. So anyway, here's another example. This is a heartbreaking story. A Detroit mom took a wrong turn on her way to Costco and ended up at the border with Canada. Listen to what happened next. Here we go.
Mother makes a wrong turn and ends up in ICE custody. Now she could be facing deportation. Welcome to CBS News Detroit at 5. I'm Terrence Friday.
And I'm Meredith Bruckner. That mother ended up on the Ambassador Bridge where she was detained by Customs and Border Patrol for 6 days with no method of communication. CBS News Detroit's Elaine Rojas Castillo spoke to that mother's attorney. She's downtown with the story.
Accidentally driving onto the Ambassador Bridge, the one-way toll road that connects the U.S. and Canada, is a pretty common mistake for Detroiters.
She wanted to go to Costco. And she put Costco into the GPS, or her family member did who was driving, and it shows the Costco in Windsor. And so they followed the directions.
For Sarai, a mother of two, that error turned her life upside down. Immigrating from Guatemala as a child, her attorney, Ruby Robinson, says she doesn't have legal status and was immediately detained by Customs and Border Protection when she reached the security checkpoint, along with her two daughters.
Being detained with your children for 5 days, has some pretty, traumatic, carries a lot of trauma for her children.
While Sarai is undocumented, her two girls, who are 1 and 5 years old, are both U.S. citizens.
A 1-year-old, and what they say, a 5-year-old? Was it 1 and 5 or 1 and 7?
1 and 5 years old.
1 and 5. A 1-year-old and a 5-year-old taken by ICE with their mother, who's been here since she was a kid. That's a dreamer. That's what that's called, a dreamer. This is a group that if you polled it 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, what the American people thought of the dreamers, it was universal. The people went, yeah, of course they should be able to stay here. There's no other place they call home. If you're taken here when you're 5 years old, where are you going to be deported to? All you've ever known is the United States of America. Where are they going to send you? You have no home anywhere else. So the dreamers were a category that was widely protected by public opinion, right? But Trump goes massively far-right anti-immigrant. The Democrats sort of meet that nativist rhetoric halfway, and now nobody talks about the dreamers. Nobody wants to protect the dreamers. And now they're kidnapping these people. She made a wrong turn, then she's kidnapped by ICE and detained for a week with a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Are both U.S. citizens. Miriam Ackerman, senior staff attorney with ACLU Michigan, says the family didn't have access to legal counsel for almost a week.
I find it absolutely appalling that U.S. citizen children, any children, are being held in these conditions that aren't fit for adults, much less children, and that CBP won't even tell us what is happening.
In a statement to CBS News Detroit, CBP Assistant Commissioner Hilton Beckham said in part, quote, "When individuals violate immigration laws, their choices make them subject to detention and removal. CBP worked to find a suitable guardian for her U.S. citizen children. However, she initially chose to keep them with her, prolonging the detention period." In response to Sarai's case, the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center and ACLU Michigan wrote a letter to CBP's Detroit port, pushing for information on detention conditions and what steps are being taken to avoid future situations.
We believe that this is the tip of the iceberg.
We want transparency. We want meaningful oversight. We want access, people to be able to access counsel and for us to be able to access them.
Robinson says the woman is back home and
think about what homie's asking for here. He's saying, hey, Trump regime, can you at least let these people meet with their lawyers? Guys, in this country, that's supposed to be a fucking given. That's off the table. Of course, this is basic constitutional stuff, basic due process rights. And they're like, hey, can you please allow us to grant these people their basic human rights? Like, what the fuck?
There's a court date set with immigration officials in June.
Now, how many examples of this do you think are out there? That's the question, right? Just like we talked about with Elon cutting off Social Security payments to people he deems are fraudulent. Meanwhile, they're not. Somebody was marked dead. They weren't dead. Somebody was marked as not a U.S. citizen. They were a U.S. citizen born on a U.S. military base on U.S. soil in Germany, right? Just like there's probably hundreds, thousands of those examples already, and only a few have gotten to the media. How many examples like this are out there? How many kids has ICE kidnapped? And in this instance, I'm not even talking about the ones they're kidnapping who are college students, which they're doing a lot of that. I'm talking about these 1-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 7-year-old who's with their parent who perhaps was a dreamer, and they got caught on the wrong street, and now they're, on the brink of being deported to a country they don't know dick about, or sent to an El Salvador slave labor gulag. All right, and finally, let me give you this. Look, I warned you guys. We've been warning you. We've been warning you every step of the way. We have hit the disappearing union leaders phase of authoritarianism. ICE detains farm worker union leader Lalo Juarez Zeferino. So this guy has a history of effective labor organizing, and they took him. If they can take a legal permanent resident, somebody with a green card, this is not an illegal immigrant, right? It's not. Somebody like Mahmoud Khalil, who's a fucking Columbia student, right? By all accounts, wouldn't hurt a fucking fly, was very diplomatic, right? Worked with Columbia and with the protesters during the protest the other year. They could take a legal permanent resident and just fucking disappear him because they didn't like what he was saying about Israel. What makes you think they can't go after anybody? Legal permanent resident, that's enough to have First Amendment rights. That's not an undocumented immigrant. So they can do it to them. They can do it to U.S. citizens also. This is why you need solidarity. This is why we all need to stand up with one voice. This is why we have to do it. Because if you don't, there's going to be nobody left when they come for you, as the old saying goes. So everybody's got to wake up, man. It doesn't get any worse than this. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.